Yeah, we good. We good. Okay. And now I'm just gonna do this. Shit, I forgot how to do an intro. Hello, folks, Jared here, and welcome back to another interview with Austin Yuen, the product manager of Racing Rivals. And today, we're gonna answer some of the questions. Well, he's gonna answer some of the questions that you guys might have about the game. So, first off, I know that we did this like 2 times already, but I still think that we should begin with like an introduction for all the people who haven't seen the previous 2 interviews.
Oh, hey, my name is Austin Yuen. I help design and co-create Racing Rivals and also Cartown.
Okay, so hold on. I really need to just give me a second. Okay, gotta do
Hello,
that.
people in chat.
Okay, okay. I
Inferno Gran Turismo's ready. He's pumped.
Hell yeah. Awesome. So, throughout this whole live stream, if you guys have any questions, just, ask them and Austin will be more than happy to answer them. So, I prepared a few questions in the meantime as well. So, well, I guess we can might as well just start off with this one. So, how long before the release of Racing Rivals did you guys actually start working on it?
Okay, so we started working on Rivals, or maybe can everybody hear me? Inferno is saying like they can't.
Hold on. I put it up a little bit. It should be fine now. So you guys,
Okay,
just let me know if it's working better now.
well, right now. Is that cool? All right,
uh,
I turned on my gain as well.
okay.
Okay, so prior to actually launching Rivals, I mean, we were working on the game for at least like 9 months. And originally, it was just going to be in 2D. So if anybody knows any history about C games prior, we made three Flash games in the past for Nito at 1320 Legends, 1320 Challenge, and shoot, forgot the other one. But basically, it's just the 1320 series. And we made those three games, and they're all drag racing games. And if you think Rivals is hardcore, I mean, those games are way more hardcore than this. So we were working on Rivals for about 6 months, um, and then CSR2 came out on the Apple stage, and they were showing all these cool graphics and stuff, and we were just like, holy shit, like we're never going to be able to compete with this because we were still working on kind of like a 2D racing game. And then when it finally went to beta, we saw CSR not really have the cool things that we would want. They didn't have pink slip racing, they didn't have betting. I don't think they had real time PvP, like I don't know what they had. So we just thought that, oh, like if we put this in 3D instead of 2D, it'll be a lot better. So we did that, and we probably took at least another 6 or so months to release after that. And after that, everything was great. Um, and we never really looked back.
Yeah, I mean, as it turns out, I mean, Racing Rivals, at the end of the day, was a casual game. But if you really wanted to get into it, you always had, that option. Like go shifting and everything. It was a simple game at first sight, but to be honest, it was also, really deep when you started going into it. So we have a few questions here. So Austin, are you okay with just like jump in on the entire timeline? From the early days to 7.0 and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think the early days were really, really good. Like, look, for the most part, we were the only ones out here doing real-time PvP, and it's really difficult. And we've got a bunch of. We also have like an open economy. Like you're able to change money, you're able to switch cars. So that's what made it really difficult. And at the very beginning, when we launched, we had a lot of anti-cheat stuff because we knew we saw stuff in Facebook. We had stuff on the 1320 series, and what was going on was that we launched, and then a bunch of like hackers and scammers and like people who were just like good at detecting like problems within our code started to really like hack our stuff, and it kind of made our like users lose faith in us. And then so we had to go really hard and try to ban a lot of people and then plug up all the holes. And then we had a bunch of like problems within the game because people couldn't trust it. And then so our users started to go down. And then we had to port over from native iOS over to Unity. So that took some time. So while we launched really well, we kind of dropped relatively quickly because people just kind of saw it as really buggy. And we also wanted to kind of fix some of the like the hacking and stuff and like just general crap that was going on it. And so yeah, like after we released in Android and we ported over to Unity, like our game got like significantly better. And then we released, like the shipyard with all the crates and everything, and we did really well. And then after Glue bought us, like that's where it kind of got very tough, and a lot of the people who were like original Glue kind of like wanted them out. And it kind of happens, like because new management, they want things a certain way, and they think that the old people are resistant to change, and they just wanted these people out. But the problem is that you kick out all the people who are like hardcore race fans, people who knew a lot about cars, and then once you do that, like it's pretty much game over. You end up with a bunch of people who don't know shit about cars, and like eventually that's what caused the eventual downfall or rivals. So yeah, and then you end up with 6.0, you end up with 7.0, and junk like that.
I mean, 7.0 was pretty much just damage control, really. But 6.0 already,
Had nothing to do with that shit. All right? Had nothing to do with 7.0, all right?
Oh god. I mean, like, it's just the idea fundamentally was so bad that it's just we'll get into 7.0 shit talking later, but let's look at some of the questions in the chat. So first off, all of you guys, Golden, Inferno, Dave, all of you, thank you so much for being here. But let's find a question over here. So Rush Racer already asked why they changed everything in 7.0, which we already, kind of spoke about briefly. It was pretty much just damage control, but here's a great one. So Austin, do you think that EA will bring back racing rivals?
To me, if they were smart, they would, because the one thing about racing is that we have no shortage of fans. And what's great is that like we definitely don't have a lot of competition, because in the mobile world, and I'm sure general business, but definitely in the mobile world, there's a lot of like talk about like a blue ocean, right? Like, so when you want to go into an area, they want to say like, oh, is this a blue ocean? Is there a lot of opportunity? Versus like a red sea or whatever. Where it's basically it's like, hey, I'm gonna get into match 3. Who do I have to compete with? Fucking everybody. But when you come into a racing game, it's like there's only like 5 studios out there that are actually making a racing game, and basically they only launch maybe one title every 2-3 years. So if you feel that you can beat 5 studios, you've got it. And so if EA were smart, they would do it, but who would make it? Like, I'm sure they'll end up making something like some Need for Speed game, but I don't know exactly what they'll make, because the last Need for Speed game on mobile was just okay, but I'm not sure exactly who's going to make it. Are they going to make it in their Australian studio at Fire Monkey? I think they kind of got out of racing. Are they going to make it somewhere else? Hopefully they do it for the fans. You know what I mean? Because like racing fans deserve another game. Because it's bullshit. Like honestly, you shouldn't have to settle for Rush Racing 2. You know what I mean? This is not exactly what any of us want. We want a brand new game with new stuff, cool things to do, but unfortunately, it just costs a ton of money to make it. Like I know that some people want us to remake Rivals or whatever, but I think we discussed it last time. It's like we're talking about at minimum, like 10 million to do this game. because you have to deal with all the licenses, you have to get the people, like unless you just have outsource every single developer to like India or the Philippines or something, like if you want to make it in the US, shit, that's really expensive. So like I hope for everybody in here and everybody out there, like we get, and even for myself, I would love to play a racing game, but right now, you got nothing.
Yeah, I mean the market is just it's just dry. Like for years there hasn't really been a mobile game that released that would really, you know, be like holy shit, this is amazing. I mean there's been some good games, but you know, CSR2 released in 2016 and it's still like number one. So it's just
Yeah.
kind of a shame, but you know, being optimistic, I think it's only a matter of time before someone, you know, gives the genre another shot because I don't know, we'll see. But
And I'm pretty sure it's gonna be the next probably really good racing game is likely gonna come from China. Because they could throw like tons of developers on it, and all they need is probably some like core people at the very top who know stuff about racing. And they're probably gonna be the ones like Tencent or like NetEase or whatever. Like they're gonna be the ones that are gonna be the ones to do it.
I mean, that would make sense. I mean, I did hear some rumors lately that apparently CA has been working on a game similar like to Racing Rivals, but that dude who always commented it said it was gonna release in March, and now it's May. So I'm gonna call bullshit on that one. But
Yeah.
okay, let's read some more questions here. So, Inferno asks, why were the prices of the in-store money so high? Now, if you don't remember, it was pretty much $100 for 1 million. So, what was the reasoning behind that?
Originally, we just wanted some additional grind, you know what I mean? Because like we wanted people to be able to play the campaign over and over again, and we wanted people to actually interact with like riskier and riskier behavior when it comes to gambling, so that we need upgrades, of course, if you want to be competitive. But then how do you get this much money? Because like as you're playing like the daily campaigns and everything, it doesn't actually generate that much money. So we would eventually want people to go into the gambling side and risk money there. Because when you do it, like of course you could win a lot, but of course you could lose a lot too. So it's just this kind of, and I apologize for anybody who are think otherwise, but Rivals is kind of built for like a degenerate gambler. You know what I mean? Because people who love to put everything on the line and win or lose, there's just like a lot of emotion going on. And that's what Rivals does, whereas say CSR is like super safe, for the most part. It's kind of like a very clean and hygienic world of cars, whereas Rivals is like the more underground, seedy, gambling, that kind of genre. So that's exactly what we were going for, and that's exactly why everything was like really overpriced. Like we wanted people to just go out and bet and just have a good time with each other rather than relying on us to provide them with all the currency like CSR.
Yo, when you put it like that, it just clicked. Like, it literally was for gambling. Holy shit! Like, that's a whole new
Oh, are
look
you new
on the
here?
game. Yeah, I mean, you know, I felt like it, but I never like realized it like right until this moment. So, well, that explains a lot actually. But hold on. Okay, so Inferno also asks whether you agree that the racing games market is currently neglected.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. You know, it's and I don't understand why. Oh, I actually do understand why. It's basically, I think, like the only real, and it's unfortunate because I think the only real people who really understand the car culture is like the Americans. Because like, and prior to the stream, Jerry and I were talking, like the biggest difference between me currently living in Europe versus growing up and being basically lived in the US all my life is that in Europe, you don't need a car. So there's no attachment to cars per se, and so you grow up, hey, I got to go to a university. How do I get there? In the Netherlands, you ride a bike, or you take public transit, like with a bus or a train or whatever. Like actually owning a car is not mandatory at all. In fact, like I got some coworkers who are like 30 something years old, 40 something years old who've never driven a car in their lives. Versus in America, there's like three cities, maybe, like Chicago, San Francisco, New York have public transit. Every other city requires you to have a car, to be a functioning adult, to have a job, to go to school, to do anything. And so we've needed a car and we've wanted a car ever since we were like 13 years old, and when you have that kind of mentality go on in your head starting at 13 years old because hey, when I turn 16 I'm going to need a car. You start thinking about it, then you think, oh, what car do I want? Do I want this car? Do I want that car? And then you start looking at cars differently. No longer are they just like the thing for you to get from one place to another place. It is like who you are. Like you are either a JDM fan, you want a truck, you want like European cars if you could afford it, like that is who you are. And I think like that kind of crazy irrationality is what a lot of other people outside of America don't quite understand. You know, like they could appreciate a good looking car like a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, but they can't appreciate, say, like a person's love for a Tiburon, for example, right? Like you just don't get it because you're just like, oh, all it is a car. It gets me from this place to that place. But they don't understand what like the love of cars means. And I think that that's what we did really well on Rivals. Um, we did really well with like our 1320 series. We did really well with our Car Town, is because we all love cars and we all think that every single car is really important, regardless of whether or not it's fast or whatever. And we also feel that, like there's a inherent, like want and need or a kind of built, not bought kind of mentality when it comes to your car. And that's where I don't think, like, say, CSR quite understands, like because they sell like the brand new sexy image of a Koenigsegg or whatever. But yeah, that's whereas we think like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna make the Civic and I'm gonna make it super fast where it can beat a Lamborghini.
Yeah,
That's a kind of different thing.
it absolutely is. I mean, you definitely have a point there.
Brian B says I'm trash talking.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing here, just being honest, discussing the games we love. But I did actually, you spoke about CSR. There was actually a question earlier, and so do you think that CSR will ever implement pink slips?
I'm not sure. I mean, because the thing is, if you suddenly introduce that kind of stuff, it completely changes your entire game economy. So I don't think that they can do it in CSR 2. If they wanted to do it with, say, like CSR like 3 or something, they could, but I don't think they could do it right now because when you inject one little thing into your economy, it changes it completely. So for example, like if we wanted to watch ads, and you got some additional coins or whatever, it it really affects your overall economy. Even if upgrades were 100,000, if you watch an ad and I gave you 1,000, you're thinking like, oh shit, it's only like 1/100th of the cost, but like I do this over time, and then I could use this to like do pink slips, and I could use this to like raise for money and stuff. It eventually will change your entire economy, and I don't think CSR2 from a game design standpoint is going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, especially with like the focus on like, different paints of the cars and everything, it's just it's too fragile. I mean, if I've played a little bit of CSR a long time ago, but already at that point, like the inflation, where you could bet money against other people, it was absolutely insane, and I don't think it's gotten like a lot better, since then. So, CSR2, I don't see, it getting pink slips either. Maybe in the future, but I don't know. CSR is pretty much like one of the safest, like, mobile drag racing series. So I personally don't really see it. But Golden has an awesome question actually. So I did hear rumors back then about Racing Rivals esports, but what would that even look like?
Oh, back when like esports and stuff was just starting to come on to the scene where we wanted to do something with it. Like we wanted to try it, but I never knew like how to properly integrate it, because like our races are over in like 7 seconds, like so how fun is that to watch? Like I just never knew how to properly do it, because when you're watching like say League of Legends or whatever, like it's pretty interesting for like half an hour,
Mm-hmm.
45 minutes, like a typical half of football or whatever. But like, how do you get excited when it's somebody racing, two random people racing, and it's over in 8 seconds, 6 seconds, like I don't know. Unless there's just a bunch of people talking and chatting and like getting together. Like when you actually go to a drag race, it's super exciting. The cars are going by and it's so loud that like you could feel it. Like I don't know if anybody's ever been to like an NHRA race, but like that is amazing. When it's going by, it's over in 4 seconds. Like as it's passing by, like your heart feels it, like the hairs on your arm feel it from like the shock waves of like the cars and everything. But like I just don't know how rivals will work on an esport, like whether or not it's actually built to be watched versus built to be played. I'm not sure.
I mean, you could make it a best of three and have a match be like 1 minute. So, yeah, shockingly, that
But there's a
is.
lot of filler in that, even if it's a best of five. Like there's a lot of filler. There's gonna be some like random, announcer that's talking, but not saying it can't happen. I just say like I didn't think that it was we came up with a good enough answer to make it into any kind of esport back in the day.
Yeah, that is sad, but it's just the way it is. So also, addicted. Welcome to the stream, dude. So let's see. I mean,
Hey,
okay. So hold on. Hey, here's a completely random question that I have. So the car stats in the game, were they? How did you actually, put car stats? Like, did you use the base stats from the manufacturers, or how did certain cars in certain classes, be the best, like the quickest? For example, the Z28 was for a while the quickest A-class car. How come, for example, I don't know, like Challenger SRT8 didn't even come close?
yeah. So like we would use a lot of stuff that's, like power to weight, gear ratios, and everything else that the manufacturer did. But of course, we kind of tweaked it ourselves near at the end based on what we felt was more desirable. Like the SRT8 was going to be great, but of course it's a boat. Like I don't know if you've ever been inside of one. It's like I'm sitting inside the driver's seat, and I'm not huge and I'm not tiny, but dude, I'm swimming in it. It's like when you put on a size 64 coat. You know what I mean? It's definitely meant for like American dudes that are like 300 pounds, that still fit very well. Not to say that like the car isn't awesome. It's just I didn't think it would be as awesome as say like a Z28. So certain cars definitely got a little bit of additional like a little power extra from us, and depending on whether or not we felt that it was more desirable, and also all the muscle cars too. All the muscle cars were basically all tuned to be much better than they actually were, because when you take a look at an old muscle car, we all love it. It looks great, but that thing was made out of like solid steel. Like who cares if it has like 400 something horsepower? It was also like 10,000 pounds. And so like basically a Camry today would like destroy, like any like muscle car in the 70s. Um, But of course, nobody wants to hear that. So, and nobody wants to like not be able to race their cars. So, basically, we made certain cars a little bit faster than others. We just kind of tweaked it. And also, like, say when you take a look at all the different like tiers of Ferraris, like there's a 355 challenge, like all these other little tiers. So every single tier had to get like a little bit better as the price went up and as rarity went up. So we definitely had to play around with it. But I'm hoping everybody enjoyed it. And, like, of course, everybody's going to say, like, oh, well, that Evo 8, that thing was way too fast. You're right. It was. But
Why
it's
do,
okay.
why do I have a feeling that with the Evo 8, you guys realized how quick it was, so you made it like top out near the end of the race? That was just like my theory. Um,
It was just a little bit too quick. I mean, but, like, we didn't try to, like, I mean, the thing is like you can't nerf everything. You know what I mean? Like, if you try to nerf stuff, people will be like super pissed because they might have spent real money on it, and so you never wanted to do anything like too drastic. So then, but the thing is, thank God we had like tons of cars, so we could just release another one that's just slightly better, over time. Golden Riders talking about the Enzo. Yeah, of course, the Enzo's a like, car that's in a childhood hero car for almost all of us. So of course we're gonna make that car better. Of course.
I do believe that with the Enzo, he was referring to the Ferrari Racer Showdown because for a long time, the Enzo, on the market, it was like a couple of $100. So, do you remember much about the Ferrari Racer Club that you guys did?
Um, was it the one that you had to like buy more and more Ferraris in order to get like the final Ferrari?
You had
I
to
think that's
spend
how it was,
like
yeah.
gems
Yeah.
and a lot of gems at that, and you would get like I
Yeah.
think the second to last car was like the F40. I always felt like that was just a little bit too much in my opinion. So what was the reasoning behind that?
It's based off of how Ferrari does it in real life.
Okay.
So even if you had, like millions of dollars, you can't just walk into a Ferrari dealership and expect to buy like the newest Ferrari, right? Like SF90 or whatever. It's like, dude, they're never gonna sell that to you because who are you? Like you aren't, classy enough. You haven't owned enough Ferraris in the past. And so basically what they want is for you to be a quote good Ferrari owner so that you have purchased two, three used cars from them from that dealership in the past, and then you can maybe go into a wait list for kind of like the lower tier Ferrari, like the newer car, but it's only like their V8 or something, or like V10. Like they're not going to give you like the V12 right away. And so it's all this kind of crazy, like purchasing of cars over time. And so we just thought like, hey, you know what? Let's let's put it in the game. When we told Ferrari about it, they're like, cool. Yeah, yeah, that sounds good. Because like any kind of thing that you do with Ferraris, you have to let them know and it has to be approved. And then so when we did the Racer Club, we told them about the mechanics, and then they said like, oh, okay, this is really good. Like carry on. And so that's why it was a kind of a tiered purchasing system. Um, yeah, hey, look, at least we didn't make it gotcha and tiered, right? So at least we just said like, hey, if you just buy these cars, you'll eventually get this car. Yes, it was a lot, but we didn't make it so that you would have to like pull on tons and tons of crates in order for you to maybe win a chance at an Enzo.
I mean, it was really at the time it was player wise from what I've seen it was a shit show. But looking back, to be honest, this whole exclusivity thing, it was, I believe, at least it was really well done because it wasn't meant for everyone. It was only for people who really spent a lot of money on it. And so the Enzos for a while there were super rare until a couple of years later they were re-released and prices went down just about the same as crypto the last few days. But still, okay, so Skittle has a question about 7.0. Do you perhaps know why the legacy garage became a thing where, all the cars people previously had were pretty much locked away?
Yeah, I mean, like, to let everybody know, like the over time, the development team of the original Rivals team basically all left, over time. And then so by the time it got to like 6.0, I believe, it was handed over to Carbonated. And Carbonated took over and they were the ones that did 7.0. So like I had nothing to do with it. And like almost nobody I knew from the original team were even part of the new team anymore. Um, and so while Carbonated were like cool dudes, I liked them. I mean, I don't think that they knew enough about a genre to really do good stuff, I can say. To do it justice. How about that? That's as PC as a way as I can say it. And so they have a lot of experience. They came from EA. Let's just also say that. And so they made it so that, like the old garages and stuff was kind of put away to the side so they can make way for new content, so they can make way for their new UI, their new kind of racing, because they thought that they could resell a lot of the old stuff as new things. Because, over time, we and almost every single racing game is going to deal with power creep, because after you release the Koenigsegg 1-1, the Regera or whatever, it's like, where are you going to go from here? Like rocket ships. You're going to go Fast and Furious 9, going into space and shit. You know what I mean? So there's nowhere to go, and so what they thought was like, Rivals had reached the limit of what we can do. It's time to go into space, so 7.0 basically is Fast 9. You know what I mean? Like it's going into space, Tyrese and Ludacris, boom, going out there and just kind of like wilding out. Unlike Fast 9, it didn't work. So, because people had worked so hard for their garages and everything over time, it just didn't resonate, and the plan didn't hit, man. What can I say?
Yeah, I think it took like 5 months from the release of 7.0 to the announcement of the game shutting down. So I'm currently still working on the story of Racing Rivals. So right now I'm working on the final part, which is gonna be like I wanted to call it the death of Racing Rivals, but it's on YouTube, so it's gonna be called the end of Racing Rivals. But pretty much, I'm gonna make like a whole. I'm gonna treat 7.0 like a different game because
Yeah.
it's just too depressing otherwise. I mean, really, how can I say it? Like, I really don't know like why they greenlit the idea because it was just so obvious. Everyone would just be pissed, but it is what it is. So let's see.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, I don't know what to say, like, I understand why they might have wanted to
Yeah.
do it. Um, but at the same time, too, if you just kind of sat back and thought about it, and it doesn't require much thought, but if you just kind of sit back and think, hey, do you think that everybody would be okay to reset all their progress after 3 years of playing? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
it's pretty
Great
much
idea.
that.
Like, give me a break, man. Like, who would want this? Like I don't know if anybody plays any idle games out there on mobile, but one of the things that everybody generally hates is like when progress resets, and that's where like I have people who work in companies that make idle games, and like when it resets, that's when players churn. So that's it. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's an interesting question, Inferno Gran Turismo. What's the craziest exploit Rivals experience? It's basically all of the ridiculous and insane um, coin farming out there in either Indonesia or like the Philippines or whatever. So you had basically people who sat in front of like 20, 30 different devices in front of them, just earning money. And then they ended up just selling that money on the black market for, gift cards to Amazon or whatever. And that's where like we had the most difficulty because like it's an open economy, what can I do? So we ended up like thinking about banning, like the entire country of like, Indonesia or whatever. But I think we did that on Facebook, I believe, but we didn't end up doing it um on Rivals.
Hmm.
But I mean that's a exploit that Rivals continue to have throughout its entire life because it's an open economy, and we didn't have like sophisticated enough tools to kind of detect like, okay, this guy created, an account. And like we started linking up a bunch of different accounts in order to have like $1 million on one race, and then eventually did $1 million race on this other thing. Like if we had to do it all over again, I would make it so that accounts had to be staggered with their betting. So within their first day, they could only spend, they could only bet like say 10,000. Um, and then after the first week, then you could maybe spend, and bet 100,000. And then, after 2 weeks, then maybe a little bit like, more to like pink slips or whatever. It would probably be that way because otherwise you got people who are just like out here selling $1 million for like $1, a million rivals coins for $1 USD. You know what I mean? So that's where our economy got absolutely destroyed.
Yeah, but to be honest, like pretty much any games with an open economy eventually is just I don't know, I feel like it's gonna get oversaturated. But to be honest, on Rush Racing 2, they did actually ban the entire country of Philippines. So that was quite interesting. To be honest, they quickly
Or
unbanned them.
Filipinos who actually wanted to race.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like, screw you guys. So that was their fantastic solution. But they also just like started banning like pretty much everyone. I mean, Addicted was in the chat earlier. He was banned for no good reason, and I'm sure it happened to a lot more people. But wait, I think Rush Racing 2 was like abandoned. I don't think they posted anything in like months. But you know,
They're out of the Ukraine, so
yeah,
I don't know, man.
yeah,
So,
okay.
so
They
like, I think they've got other things to worry about.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. I mean, the game was in the process of going downhill anyway, but I really hope that the developers are safe, even though their game isn't fantastic. But it's still there for people who want to experience racing rivals, but worse. And I was talking about 7.0 earlier, but I had another theory about it. So pretty much, I feel like when 7.0 came out, it was between the 7.0 update, pretty much just being damage control, or the game was just gonna get shut down because before 7.0 was announced, it really, shit started to hit the fan a lot. So, were there any, rumors of the game potentially being shut down at that time?
Well, I mean, I think the game wasn't earning that much money, and this was kind of their like Hail Mary at an attempt to kind of resurrect rivals. Um, but the thing is, it's like they should have just kind of thought about it and just say, hey, like if we're gonna try to reset everybody's progress, I mean, might as well just use like your existing staff to make something else, And I don't even think that Carbonated was really like super interested in like rivals. They were using rivals because I think EA was giving them a little bit of extra dough to kind of maintain it, and then because like I think Carbonate is doing some other types of games. I mean, they're not doing racing games at all, and I think that like at some point you just gonna have to like cut your losses and think like, hey man, like we're not. we're not good enough to do a racing game. It's not within our wheelhouse, and we should just kind of let it go, and so we can concentrate on our own things. I don't know if it was like a contractual obligation or anything else, but I just think that they could have done um, something else. You know, even when we were doing 6.0, I was very much against it because they did like a complete change to the UI, and also they changed like shaders and everything, and try to make it as pretty um, as CSR too. And I never thought that that was a good idea because our game didn't need it. You know, like our game was very fun and it offered something completely different. So if you're out here trying to chase like graphical fidelity or whatever, you're never gonna win. You know, like CSR2, like those guys over at Natural Motion, I mean, they got some of the best tech artists and everything else out in the game. You know, like you're never gonna compete. So you're better off trying to tell like a much better story, you know, for the players. And for us, the story wasn't about like, you know, what was a narrative. It was about what players can do. You know, we wanted to add more tools for the players to be able to do more. I mean, if you looked at, say, our 1320 stuff, um, players had so much to do. There was like a used car lot where players could actually sell. There was a lot more kind of um, team play, team interactions, team banks. There's so much drama within the teams, within you fighting other teams that like CSR2 just doesn't have, you know? And I wanted to go in that direction, but it just didn't happen. So that's it, man.
Okay.
Joe Spector. It's the game wasn't earning that much money by the time like way down the line. By the time 7.0 came around. And that dev team I think was they only had like maybe 8 people on it by
Oh
that point.
damn.
It's, because it just couldn't. I mean, they weren't making enough, so why put more people on it? Because they were working on their own stuff, you know, and Rivals was just kind of on the side for them.
Okay, so but Husband actually asked whether Rush Racing 2 was a reboot of Racing Rivals, and it is not. It is
It
definitely
is not.
not. But
It is not.
Inferno also mentioned the glow rims and the underglow. Who came up with the idea for that?
It just came from like some people within the team, you know, like it was just one of those things that somebody said, just, you know, like, hey, you know what? Wouldn't it be cool if? And that's a lot of how things always get started, you know? Wouldn't it be cool if we had Underglow? Wouldn't it be cool if we had a crazy class that was just concept cars, which is the X class? You know, like, wouldn't it be cool if blah, 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 right? And it just came from a random person. I don't really even know who it was. It might have, I think it might have come from like an artist, and was like, you know what, that would be kind of cool, and we put it in. But a lot of the things in there, like, it just came because people, like, you know, hopefully the entire kind of company was very open, you know, like we were very much car fans, and you know, we were in Long Beach, and the Indy Grand Prix of Long Beach was right downstairs for us. Every single year we used to have a huge party where we can see the racing from our office, and downstairs it was like basically like a big party. There was a big convention center full of cars. We would go out and go to those events. We would go to NHRA races. We would go to car shows, and we would try to get inspired by everything. And we would take the entire team, you know, like people who just came in, brand new artists that didn't know anything about cars, and we would want to kind of tell everybody and teach everybody about why cars is so special. And then eventually, I think most people who worked on the team liked cars to a degree, you know, and then so, you know, like underglow and then like glowing rims and everything, like, you know, of course that doesn't really happen in real life, so people like myself are a little bit more hardcore. But when somebody said like, hey, you know, I think I saw Tron the other day and they had these cool glow rims, do you think that we can do that? It's like, you know what, I'm in. Let's do it. So that's kind of like how a lot of these kind of wildin' ideas came from. So yeah.
Pretty awesome. But actually, how much of the Cartout team actually transferred over to Rivals, or was it pretty much the same team?
Mm, we ended up having maybe like 3 or 4 people that transferred over, but then like a lot of the other people had to stay because Cartown was still making a good amount of money, and we had to keep up with content and everything, and also because our town was strictly on Facebook only. And then by the time when we wanted to go on mobile, I mean, those are two completely different skill sets. And so we ended up hiring some additional people. Some additional people learned how to, like code in native iOS. And yeah, I mean, that's how it was. And the original team on Rivals was never big. I mean, like, even when we were making like really good money, when we were like, yeah, like making good dough, making good dough. I don't want to say exactly how much. We only had like maybe 15, 17 people on it total, ever.
I mean, it really doesn't sound like a whole lot, you know? I mean, 15 people is still a decently sized team, but obviously, you know, for a game the size of Rivals, I would honestly say a lot more. But so, what were some of your favorite features from Racing Rivals?
Um, I mean, I think in the end it ends up being like PvP, real-time PvP gambling. I mean, that to me is our biggest strength and also our biggest like headache. Like we ended up having like a specific dedicated back-end engineer that just took a look at all the exploits and hacks that people have. That his sole job was just to fix those problems. But a real-time PvP gambling, I mean, that is what made Rivals special. I think everybody in this chat is going to probably say the exact same thing, right? That is what made Rivals so much better. Because if you just wanted a drag racing game, you could play CSR. You know, even if you look at CSR one compared to like Rivals, right? Like, and that game was released at least a year and a half prior. That game looks significantly better than Rivals, but it didn't matter, because it's about what you can do in the game. And I think that this is where, a lot of these new, racing games and stuff, like they're all going after the wrong thing. They want a better sim, but at least me, and I don't know about anybody else, like, do you actually want to play a sim racing game on your phone? Like a real racing 2? To me, no. Like if I wanted to play a sim, I'd rather go do it on PC or whatever.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just we already spoke about this in the previous interview, but absolutely. I mean, you know, there is only so much that you know you can do on your phone at the end of the day. But which racing games would you recommend to viewers?
Damn it. I knew you would ask some of this, but like honestly, I'm not impressed by any racing game on mobile too much. And I mean I respect the hell out of uh anybody trying to make a racing game, right? And I'm cool with the guys at Hutch. They've got some really interesting games. I'm cool with the guys over in Estonia too. Um, but there's nothing new. Like every racing game out here has absolutely been around for at least 4 years. So like there's no new games.
It's a
And
shame.
it's a shame. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Jack, of course. I would love to join another team to make a racing game. Right? Like if NetEase wants to throw me some money and like, hey, let's talk, whatever. But like I don't know. I saw NetEase's new game. It's a sim. It's basically like Real Racing 3. Let's just call it Real Racing 4. I forgot what it's called. Race Masters or
yeah,
some kind
something
of
like that.
like that. Yeah. Yeah, but like it's just a sim, like who wants to, like honestly, who wants to do this? Like who wants to do this? And like it just think about it for a hot second. And I get it, like, in China they didn't grow up with consoles and stuff, and so for the most part, like everybody's gaming experience has come on mobile, so they don't really care, right? But it just doesn't work for, I think, rest. Can you imagine being in line at a Starbucks, like tilting your phone to be in a race? Like you look like a dork. Like I just don't think that anybody wants that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Bharat Hazmd actually asked if you knew or how much did you knew about the gray market.
Yeah, I mean, we knew it. You know what I mean? We knew all about it. But honestly, Louis, what are we gonna do about it? Like the only thing that we can say is, post it on the chat, guys. It's you have nothing to do with this. Buy it at your own risk. Uh, Number one, don't do it. You'll likely get scammed. And we were thinking about a lot of different ways to actually have a used car lot on in the game. You know, but we just couldn't figure out like how to properly make it work. Because the thing is like after you lose a race, you know, you have the ability to rebuy your car back, right? Of course, we charged you like a crazy amount. It was like the cost of your entire car, also the cost of all your upgrades and all the time it took for you to purchase all those upgrades, multiplied by I think 1.5. You know, so it was like crazy expensive, but people still ended up doing it, except for like the few cars that we didn't allow for it. Um, but then they could essentially any kind of special car, they could just put it in the used car lot over and over and over again, and then flood the market with it. Then what would we do, right? As developers, we would say, all right, fine, this car you can no longer rebuy your cars. And of course, people don't really want that either because then they may not engage in this kind of risky racing activity that we wanted to encourage them to do. So, I mean, it's tough, like making games is not the easiest thing, like I don't know if anybody watched Grandma's Boy, which is like a really funny movie about gaming development, but like actual development is nothing like that, like actual development is looking at everything from a lot of different like ways, taking a look at the data, like what people do, like you have to think about it from a lot of different perspectives. So it ended up being very difficult for us to do anything about the gray market, number one, and then two, put anything in the game that would be actually, a much better way for people to obtain cars that they couldn't. So for example, like we did an integration for Google Play because they showed us a lot of love. So we released a specific Google Play car. And we never released it again. It was only in the market for like, I don't know, 2 weeks. And it ended up being like extremely rare. Um, so yeah, I mean, like if you lost out on it, unfortunate. But I don't think that that car was able to be duplicated. I'm not sure now, but
I'm pretty sure they're talking about the Google Play M2G2, and from what I remember, it couldn't be duplicated. But another Google Play Edition card, I think there were at least two. There was also the Acura NSX, which was super rare. I think it only came as a bundle, and the bundle cost like $100. So that one was actually insanely rare. But you also talked about the buyback feature earlier, and it's funny because on most cars it really didn't make sense, to buy them back. But there were certain cars which were glitched, and you could actually buy them back for a fairly reasonable amount. So I'm not sure if you're aware of this car, but there was a really rare body kit for the Civic Si that I'm pretty sure was a glitch, and we called it the Devil's Civic. But since it was still, only a Civic Si, if you didn't have like any, special parts or upgrades on it, it would be super cheap to replicate. And those cards were crazy expensive for a while. It's probably a really niche question, but do you like remember like a Civic Si with like a hidden body kit or something like that?
I don't completely remember, but it's absolutely something that I would have done because my very first car was a Civic Si, and I probably made it so that it was better than it should be.
I mean, the Civic
You know what I
Si,
mean? Because
yeah.
yeah, because like that was my first car, right? So
Mm,
like I have a lot of special memories about it. So then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make this car way faster and way better than it has any right to be. It's kind of like I think the creators of NBA Jam, I think like they were either like fans or didn't like the Detroit Pistons, so that when you played them, they were either like great or terrible, like some kind of thing. So it's like a mild like hidden Easter egg.
mm.
So I mean, I did a lot of that for cars that I may have owned in the past, like the E92 M3 was a car that I owned when I had Rivals. So that's why it was like the starter car, at the very, very beginning. It was a white car, matte white, so I made it so that, everybody had a chance to drive it, you know what I mean? So it was just really cool, like those types of things that we would end up doing because uh, we had an emotional attachment to our cars, right? And then so we wanted it so that, hey man, if you got the E92, you know what's up.
I mean, the M3 in the game, there were actually a couple of cars being rotated out for like the starter bundles, and the M3 was one of them. There was also, I know, Skyline R33 and like Veloster later on, I believe. But it was still pretty cool because those packages actually made, complete sense because they were pretty cheap. Okay, so if you guys in the chat have any more questions, please make sure to leave them right here. But let's continue. So I'm pretty sure we already touched on this earlier, but what do you think is the exact moment that, in your opinion, the game went downhill?
6.0 probably was it. 6.0 is when we did all of those um UI changes and also all the new shaders and stuff. And at that time, I was still, like at the company, and I was adamant that like, guys, you should not taste this at all. Like I thought that it was fool's kind of errand because what they were trying to do was make graphics much better, and we didn't have the tech artists to do it. Like I didn't think that the UI was any better. We ended up spending months on it where I had much better ideas to put into the game. Um, but it just didn't work out well. And everything that they kind of executed was like kind of poor. It's because like near near that time, the people who kind of took over the game didn't have a lot of car knowledge, so they didn't understand, what was going to move the needle. So I think that that was just like a mistake. And then so as when I knew that people with our knowledge weren't being listened to, then I knew it was like, okay, nah, it's kind of time to go, because what's the point? Like you're kind of shouting into the wind and you're never gonna win. So yeah, I mean, some of the things that I wanted to do, for example, was to have various body kits and stuff introduced into the game that they were going to be kind of considered performance parts, which would have lightened the car so
Mm-hmm.
that it would affect overall performance, and then so you would have various levels of body kits, various levels of like, fiberglass, carbon
That
fiber,
actually made it into the game.
aluminum.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, I know, but the way that they
oh,
did it was not exactly like, I think, good enough for what
okay,
I thought
okay.
that was going to be like a difference maker. Um, and so yeah, I mean, like, imagine like we didn't, after a certain period of time, we didn't do a lot of body kits into the game, right? I mean, because the amount of cost that it takes to make a body kit, we can make new cars. Um, so, but the thing is like like I said, with power creep, once you release the Koenigsegg and everything else, I mean, like, where else are you gonna go? So you have to go kind of more horizontal than vertical.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would want to make all of the cars, like my boy Infernal Gran Turismo talking about the S15, right? Like we would want to make those cars faster,
Mm-hmm.
through lightness. So you would get different body kits on it so that it would not only look better, it would actually perform better. Um, and I think that that would give all of our existing cards a lot more life moving forward because then you say like one day it's like, oh, like this card got no love or whatever. It's go, no, I just dropped a brand new like, wide body a carbon fiber kit on it. So now it's, comparable to the top of its class. So now everybody's going to put more money into it, more time and effort into it because, you have to get these body kits are going to be really difficult to get. Like we're going to come up with like good body kit stylings, we're going to have like famous artists create body kits for us and stuff. You know what I mean? But all of that didn't happen, right? Because they were out here trying to chase some graphical fidelity that they were never going to reach. So it's kind of what I knew. 6.0 is when I knew that things were going to go terribly terribly for the players. And unfortunately, it kind of kept on sliding, and then it eventually got moved over to carbonated, and then they took it and did whatever they wanted with it.
I mean, it's just it's unfortunate, but yeah, 6.0. I mean, the things that you talked about, they were implemented, but I'm sure, like you said, that there were much better ways you could implement it. So, unfortunately, graphics, like in almost all of the games, graphics don't really matter. You need to focus on the gameplay a lot more because people aren't gonna just graphics isn't gonna keep players coming back. Um,
Oh,
so
no, I
okay.
mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
look at Roblox. Look at Roblox. Look at Minecraft. Like you got these graphics made, from two dudes carving a potato. You know what I mean? Like, so it's totally fine. As long as something is there for the players to enjoy. Like, yeah, of course, Cars is meant as, something really sexy and, you want a cool thing. But in the end, it ends up being like, what can I do with this car? Like, what is it going to do? How am I going to interact with others and everything? And that was not thought through. That's all I can say. Not thought through.
Unfortunately, yeah. So Jack also asks, why do you think that people don't add pink slip racing in their racing games, like on PC, for example?
Yeah. I mean, like, pink slip racing is very kind of specific to drag racing. So it started like way back in the day, like in the 50s or whatever, and it's kind of uniquely American as well. And if you add pink slip racing, then it changes your entire economy, and it changes your entire kind of user base too, because no longer can you have a kind of very casual game because when you're let's just say, for example, some person came in and goes, "Oh, like this is a really fun game." Um, okay, actually, let me tell you about one of our investors. One of our investors was taking a look at our game. And so they were taking a look at 1320 Legends, which is our drag racing game that we had prior to everything else. And then so they were evaluating whether or not he wanted to put money into our company. So he picked up the game and he started playing and he put $20 down and he got a R35 Skyline that was doing, like super fast at the time, right? And then so he goes in and he races somebody for some, cash, and he won, right? And then the guy's like, "Hey man, like I had a bad shift. Do you want to like race again for, some money?" He's like, "Cool, let's do it." He did it again and like the investor won again and the other guy's like, "Oh man, like let me do it again, like I kind of messed up with shifts and everything." And then so he goes, "Yeah, sure, why not?" He goes, "You know what, this time I'm super confident. Let's pink slip." So the investor's like, "Dude, I already beat this guy twice. This guy's nothing." And then so on the third race the investor gets destroyed, because clearly this guy was hustling him. And then so as soon as he gets destroyed the investor's like, I can't believe what just happened. You know, so and then he's like, "Ugh, I gotta race this guy again, but now I have no car, and that's so I gotta put in additional $20 to buy another car." And he's like, "Oh, dude, I think I think these guys at Sea Games has something here." And then so that's how he invested in our company because he got scammed. Well, he got hustled, and that is a very niche audience. And you can't just have some person, some 10-year-old come in and want to play like a Forza game or whatever, and just go out and have fun. When you start having like gambling, pink slip racing, things like that, I mean, like your audience shrinks tremendously. So let me just tell you like one little stat that everybody is like completely surprised at. One of the major statistics in games, especially mobile games, is retention, right? So most everybody wants your day one retention, meaning are you going to come back the next day and play this game? Everybody wants like 50%. Like everybody that comes in the game, you want at least half of them to come back and play the next game. Rivals had a day one retention of 18%.
Ouch.
18%. It's really tough. It's really, really tough because you could go in and you could get destroyed, you can get hustled, and it's like a hardcore game, you know? Yeah, it's casual to play. You just have to tap, like five buttons. Like one button five times. It's nothing. Um, but what the actual game is, what the essence of this is it's a game for people who love cars, also love gambling. So it's a super niche audience. So that's why I don't think a lot of people add in pink slip racing because there's just too much risk reward in it. I personally love it, and I'm sure everybody in this chat loves it because we like that kind of stuff. Like we don't mind it. But you just ask any racing fan off the street, "Hey man, do you want to like play a racing game?" Cool. Do you want to play a racing game that you're gonna lose all your shit? No, absolutely not. Because you might have worked really hard for it. So, like that's the kind of thing that Rivals was. We all love it, but it's not for everybody. It's really tough.
When you put it like that, yeah, it really is a lot more niche than one would expect. But I mean, it was still, was it at one point the biggest drag racing game on mobile?
Oh yeah, like we were. I mean, maybe not in downloads. I mean, because Apple used to love CSR so much that they would never feature us at all.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the day, an Apple featuring was basically like winning the lottery. I remember we calculated it like how many users the the Apple featuring brought in. I think there was like five or six people inside the Apple headquarters that were actually in charge of featuring. So the amount of money that featuring gave, I could walk in there and give everybody a Lamborghini, and we would still be positive ROI wise. So that's how big it was back in the day. So for us, we never were on the top of like the downloads, but we were on the top of both iOS and Android in terms of uh, revenue, because you know Vegas and gambling and everything, it works. It works. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what to say, but it definitely works. So we were definitely onto something, but it's a smaller audience. Like we got a lot of people in because it's racing and racing does really well, but 18% that went through, those are the people that were a little bit more hardcore. You know what I mean? Those are the ones that we wanted to keep long term. So that is it's exactly what we were going for. We were going for the people that were like ourselves, like everybody listening here, like who loved cars, who didn't mind having a riskier type of game rather than a very kind of safe linear progression, like game where, as you bought upgrade one, it was good. You bought upgrade two, then upgrade three. But like rivals, it's like, okay, now you buy the pro parts and suddenly your upgrades, made your car slower. So then you would have to buy another one and start having to experiment. Then you have a bunch of people who are out here like on Excel who bought every single car, every single part, and then like plugged it into Excel to tell everybody else like, hey, you know what? This one is the exact thing that you've got to do, and so yeah, I mean, we attract a much different audience. And, like Golden Rider right here writes, like thought about bringing race cars like the CLK GTR, Mazda 787B, and GT3 cars to a drag racing game. It's like me. You know what I mean? Like those cars are awesome. Why wouldn't you want to race against those things? You know what I mean? Because those are great. And I think like those are the things that like we wanted because of course if suddenly you brought in, like Top Fuel Dragster. I mean, this just gets ridiculous. This is now the Fast Nine, kind of like going into space kind of territory. But like CLK GTR and the Mazda 7B. I mean, those are the things that like almost every single person that likes cars, lusts after. Like I was just watching a video today on somebody driving around in a Ferrari GTO, 250 GTO for 10 minutes at Goodwood. I didn't even watch it. I just listened to it for 10 minutes because just the sound of the engine was amazing. And I was like doing work and listening to that sound and just really inspired for talking today. You know what I mean? Because that is the kind of people that I am, that I'm sure that everybody else is here, that like we just love cars. Like we like the sound. The 787B, amazing car, and that sound is so iconic because it's a rotary engine that like, I was listening to after that Ferrari video, I listened to the 787B video, because seeing those types of things, hearing those types of cars, I mean, like it just I don't know, man. It's like falling in love every single time.
Absolutely. There was a question earlier, like a while ago, but did you have a favorite class in Racing Rivals?
Um, I think I liked the concept ones the most. I mean, because they were just a little bit wild, you know? Not, like after a while, you kind of have to add a lot of different cars into Rivals or into any racing game, and you might as well add the craziest looking things out there, like the Mazda Ferrari, like the BMW 3.0 CSL Homage R, and the Onyx, and all those kind of crazy things that I think the concept cars are always meant to inspire people that like this is how design should be with like a blank canvas. And I love that kind of stuff, like I don't know, like if you didn't have to think about safety, physics, air drag or anything, like what kind of crazy cars did you create, Like so I just love that class. X class was one of my favorites. I mean, we just couldn't get enough cars in it to make it like a very big and viable class. But we try to do as much as we can, because I think that those are just very, very interesting. And yeah, because like I mean, after everything, like yeah, you have the GT classes and you had like the S and all that other stuff, and like it's just not as I think exciting as something that's just crazy. When you see like a brand new car that just looks kind of like crazy, like a concept car. I mean, it kind of reinvigorates like your love for it, because everybody can just make the same thing, like the same beige Camry over and over again. But when you see something wildin', you're thinking like, dude, this designer was on some drugs or something, and I love it. Like I don't know, like it's hard to describe, right? I mean, I'm sure all of us felt it at some point.
The X class was so unique to Racing Rivals because you have every game now and then adding like one or two concept cars, but yeah, Racing Rivals really went crazy with it, and it was pretty awesome to see. It laid somewhere in between S and R class, I believe. But oddly enough, X class had some of the best cars for lobby tuning, So they actually were fairly useful. The CSL Homage, for example, was a fantastic car, even though I really didn't know how to drive it. But they definitely had their uses, so that was pretty
Yeah.
cool. So okay.
I mean, like I really like number one. I love the classic CSL 3.0, right? Like I loved it, and when they released that homage, I remember talking to our BMW rep. And it's like, guys, I got to have this car in the game. He's like, hey, like we don't know how it drives. It doesn't have any stats. Because you know what? I'm gonna make it good. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna make it great, because like these are X-class cars, right? It's not meant to be real life. So, yeah, I mean, I think that like 3.0 CSL Homage R, I mean, that really was very good. The next generation of the CSL 3.0. So, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, yeah. So some of those are really great.
Mm.
Who came up with Turf Wars, Gran Turismo? We did, right? Like it was very and like of course a lot of people will come out here and says like, oh, I did, but at the very beginning when Turf Wars and everything came out, like everybody in that room minus like one person, two people, like out of a room of eight, like we had very hardcore car fans there, and we all thought, you know what, like it would be really good to do as a team. Like, so it's not just individual, because when you have a team and other people are, counting on you to do a thing, it's a lot more fun. And so we came up with the idea of Turf Wars, and at the very beginning, it was just a kind of didn't have enough rewards. So when we made a lot of the better rewards come out of Turf Wars, that's when Rivals really, really took off, because now people can play with one another. They could go out and race against like another team, and then they could go out and start like crushing cars. So like it opened up a lot of different things. So yeah, the Turf Wars was one of our better ideas.
I mean, the turf wars, they were so addicting, and especially, I mean, most turf wars had like unique prize cards. They had new ones. Sometimes they would be rotated, but other than that, they were a great incentive for players to continue racing. So that was pretty awesome. But Golden. Also asked about the Mazda Furai because it was one of the most difficult cars in the game to drive because the shifts were so quick. So how did you like? Were you guys able to like select how, I guess, challenging certain cars were to drive?
I mean, prior to releasing any of the cars, of course, we would test it and just kind of mess around with it. And without being very like scientific, some cars we just thought like, you know what? Let's make this weird. Like let's just make this one difficult to drive. And we think that people will still want to do it, um, because the Mazda Ferrari looked amazing. But because there's no like real driving, like there's no horsepower, there's no torque, there's no like dyno curve, there's no gear ratios to that car. Like what do you do? You know? So we just made it up, and sometimes it worked, other times it didn't, because but the thing is that, like if we made every single car roughly the same to drive, I mean, rivals would be no fun. Um, so certain cars had to be a little bit crazy. Other cars had to be super easy. So, uh, if we had stats, we would try to keep it as close to what the car would actually drive like in real life. But if it's like an X-class car or anything else, I mean, like, what do you do? How do you make something drivable when this car doesn't even exist in real life?
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm having
Ruben, I'm
a bit
sorry.
of a moment. Hmm?
And Ruben, sorry, I cannot bring it back. I don't own the source code. I love the game too.
Yeah, to be honest, we actually talked about EA, shockingly low amount today, which is a bit different, but yeah. So Jack also asked whether you ever thought about making a way to pink slip more than one person at a time, and this is a good one.
Yeah. Okay. So in classic kind of drag racing, it's just 1v1. right? And of course, sometimes they have like kind of like spectacles of having, four people race at the exact same time. But those are kind of like spectacles because it's more dangerous in real life. Um, the reason why we didn't want to have any more cars um, on the track at the exact same time was actually more of a technical problem. It's because latency, like because Rivals is real-time PvP, he had to make sure that, both players were as like how do you say, like as fair as possible, right? Without latency and everything else. And when you try to make like a real-time multiplayer game, it's very difficult because of latency, because we allowed because there's actually only like five, six inputs in the entire race. It's not like we're making a MOBA where latency is really, really important. So we can make it so that somebody in the United States could be playing somebody in Europe, somebody in Asia at the exact same time because there was only like six inputs. But when we had to have more than two people, then it becomes a lot more difficult. Um, because now you have, like maybe two, three, four different people on at the exact same time, worrying about latency. One's in Europe, one's in Asia, one's in Brazil or whatever. And then now it's like a giant clusterfuck, engineering wise, because it's just very difficult to kind of manage that kind of stuff. I believe Gameloft made a game that had like four people. I think it was called Street Storm or something, that had four people race at the exact same time, and it wasn't good at all. No, I think Jerry probably played it. It wasn't great, and they probably learned because they didn't talk to us. Like um, because it's a problem. When later I went to another company and I actually did was in charge of a MOBA. It was so problematic to have people from various regions playing one another, so that you end up having to have like a European server, an Asian server, an American server, and that basically locks everybody out from playing one another. And so, when you're dealing with 18% retention on day one, you don't have that many players to play at the exact same time, because they could be in different lobbies, and we wanted as many people to play at the exact same time. So we just made it so that everybody could play one another. So we could not expand more people racing at the exact same time.
It was just too much, for not. Just wouldn't be the same. I'm sorry, I just saw a massive fucking spider on my wall and it's terrifying. So I got a little distracted. Sorry about that. But did you guys ever consider like public stats for players? Other than street cred?
Yeah, I mean, like the thing is, we wanted to do a lot more in the game. We wanted. I say we. I mean we. I mean I. Like because I was in charge of the game. Like I wanted to do a lot more. But after Glue bought us, like it became a little bit more different. Like what you had to do every single month, you have to do like every single quarter, quarter on quarter revenue. Like next quarter had to be better than this quarter, and blah blah blah. And if I wanted to say, what, in this particular build, in this particular quarter, I want to focus on the players. I want to focus on the players with different, like, different avatars, different stats. Everybody can see everybody's public stats. Everybody can see your win-loss ratio, your races, how many times, and I'm sure we could have found a flag where you fouled, you did other things, you did questionable races and things. Um, and what I really wanted to do was highlight the players a lot more, and highlight the teams a lot more. So if you did win a turf war, suddenly this team would be like up in everybody's face at the exact same time. Like they would take over all of the turf war lobbies and, like give them additional abilities for you to hate them more, you know? And I just think that would have been fun, like because that would have just created a lot more drama. But hard to justify that. as a quarter on quarter kind of business, because like somebody at Glue would say like, well, how much does this have an effect on revenue? Zero, immediately. Because if I said like, oh, I want everybody to hate, this particular team because they won turf wars, it's like, well, what good is that? Like, I don't can't quantify that. It's definitely a lot more fun and it's definitely a lot more engaging. So maybe retention might go up. I don't know. But like these are kind of gut instincts of uh of people who really like cars and like really think that like additional drama, additional like like tomfoolery would be fun. But for them, it's like a little bit more corporate. And I completely understand where they're coming from. Like they're a publicly traded company, so they have to report more revenue each and every quarter, and I get it. And that's where, some of the development got kind of the shift got focused a little bit more away from just like out and out fun into a little bit more revenue focused.
Yeah, you spoke a lot about retention. So, 18% obviously not very good for the first day, but it was probably a lot better after that, right?
Well, the thing is, it's like it's the long-term retention that we
Mm-hmm.
the having. Like so at the very beginning, your D1 retention is shitty. But our day 30, day 60 was the exact same retention as our day like 720. Like once people got into the game, once people got into the community and, like joined the team, started racing, loved it, and then they stayed for a very long time. So, I mean, and this is why we're still having conversations about like the game, like, almost 4 years after it shut down, because it's just something that we all very much enjoyed. But that doesn't, like if I would have gone back in time and restarted Rivals again, of course we would address day one retention, to make sure that as many people came on board and enjoyed it and didn't just drop a brand new person into like the deep end of into the pool with a bunch of sharks swimming around looking for blood. Like we probably would have onboarded that person a little gentler, but the end, it's still a pool swimming with sharks, because that's exactly who Rivals players are.
Yeah, there were so many unique, ways for the players to screw each other. It was honestly like so amazing, Um, shit, I'm sorry. I'm having like a little bit of a headache over here, so I'm not really like fully social. So sorry about that, but um,
Golden Rider, the Rivals was in Unity.
yeah, I was just about to bring
Originally,
that up.
originally it was in native iOS, but then eventually it went into Unity, and then that's the reason why we wanted to go into Unity was that it was a much easier engine to work on, and it allowed us to simultaneously release on iOS and also Android at the same time.
So, have you ever considered expanding the campaign, like Inferno asks?
Yeah, like we wanted to expand the campaign a little bit more, but at the same time, part of Rivals is multiplayer. So if we expanded it more, it wouldn't have been as rivalry, you know? It would have been a little bit more CSR. So I think what we might have done is extended the campaign so that like new players can like enjoy it and then kind of just go into multiplayer for like a little bit of a taste. Um, but I don't know if anybody plays like Clash of Clans here, but Clash of Clans has a campaign, and where you have to go raid a goblin village or whatever. And essentially, that entire campaign is just a very, very long tutorial system of you experiencing a lot of different kind of situations and everything. And again, if I were to do it over, I would probably do something very similar to where, like you would have to race in different classes, like you would have to upgrade different cars and like, put on different parts and everything else so that you understand where like the part system is very unique, where like, one like the second part is better than one, the third part is better than two, but once you start getting into the pro parts, it's very like it's varied, and you have to kind of play around with it. So a lot of things that we could have done, but I don't think I would have a very long um, kind of single player. Because if you just wanted to play a single player drag racing game, I mean, I strongly encourage you play CSR, because as a single player game, that game is far superior. As a multiplayer game, that game doesn't hold a candle to what Rivals could do.
Yeah, I mean, CSR really is just more single player. Uh, I mean, multiplayer. I don't think you even. I don't think it's even real time. You just like race pretty much pre-recorded. I believe. I'm not totally sure about that, but yeah. So we've been going on for about 19 minutes now, and I think that well, if you guys in the audience have like any more questions, make sure to leave them right now so Austin can answer them. But other than that, I think we are gonna sign off pretty soon over here.
Oh,
Uh,
Bunker Spy, ask a question, man. You late, but you did make it.
Hell yeah. Also, hold on, I still have a few more questions here. So, where do you see the mobile racing game market in a few years?
I think it'll be dominated by a lot even more casual games. Like I think to actually have like a Rivals like game. Rivals works because like our audience is already there, because like people love cars and people don't want necessarily like the electrification of every single car because something about like the sound and the smell of gas, like is really really special. But for the most part, I think, like casual games on mobile are here to stay. I mean, like, currently I'm working at a company that focuses primarily on casual games for women, and it is a market that's incredibly good, because a lot of times a lot of the games aren't made for women, and even if they were, they're made by dudes thinking that they know things about women. So it ends up being like pink, yeah, or something terrible, you know. But there's like a you know, uh, huge audience out there of women that really like the game, but they won't call themselves gamers because they think, oh, well, I only play Animal Crossing. Yeah, but you play Animal Crossing 6 hours in a day. You're a gamer. If you're watching, like Animal Crossing videos on YouTube, you are a gamer. You know what I mean? Like, you may not like to call it that, but that is what you are. And then so I think like all of that combined with the kind of casual system games right now, I mean, like casual games are going to dominate even more than they currently do, but they're gonna kind of skew a little bit over to more hardcore, to not hardcore, to like mid-core mechanics because people are getting more and more kind of accustomed to playing mobile games and they don't need all that hand-holding tutorial and stuff, so that eventually you can have a game that is more kind of mid-core, but still kind of have that casual vibe. So Rivals 2, I would love it, Turismo, but like I don't know if you've got $10 million rolling around. Let's talk.
Unlikely, unlikely. Unfortunately,
You don't know this guy. He could be rich.
maybe. I mean, if he is, he can just like message any one of us, and maybe we can make it happen or something. So Golden has another question. Hold on. If I got in contact with any other people from your team, and unfortunately, I didn't because I've been rather busy the past few weeks. But maybe, I mean, we can get some, more people on here if they would be okay with that. But we'll see about that.
We'll see because like a lot of those other guys are in the US,
Mhm.
so it's and then they have day jobs, right? So unless we
Yeah.
do it in the weekend, it's going to be tough for us to kind of do this. I did recruit one of my main guys over to the Netherlands, where I currently work. So that's been really nice. So like if I could have that guy, because he worked on all of our games. He worked on 1320 Legends. He worked on Town. He also worked on Rivals. So I mean, he's a cool dude.
That would be awesome. I mean, maybe we can, talk off stream and perhaps make it happen. So we are gonna wrap it up slowly over here. But once again, Austin, thank you so much for taking your time and answering all these questions. It's been a real pleasure having you. And who knows, maybe we can do this again someday.
Yeah, I mean, we could do this again. We could talk about anything you want, man. Like, one of these days we should just kind of talk and talk about like all the various games that are on the market today, and we could just talk shit about each and every game and like why all these games are, I don't know, not as good as Rivals.
I mean, I'm down with that. Sounds like a plan. Uh, awesome. So everyone in the audience, thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Take